One of the core elements that we provide is a full accounting solution. And as property managers are scaling their business, maybe moving from paper, if they're still on paper, having a purpose-built accounting solution really helps a lot.
Welcome to the Property Management Brainstorm Show with Bob Preston. Bob is the president, owner, and broker of North County Property Group, the fastest growing and top-ranked property management company in North County, San Diego. This podcast is for property owners and investors who are considering hiring a professional property management company to manage their property assets. You'll hear from leading professionals on the best practices surrounding the San Diego rental market, what's involved in successfully renting your property, and how to make sure your property is managed correctly. Now, here is your host, Bob Preston.
Welcome to the Property Management Brainstorm podcast. I'm Bob Preston, your host of the show, broadcasting from our studio at North County Property Group in Del Mar, California. Today, we're going to talk about the importance of managing all aspects of a rental property. Notice I used the term manage and all. So even if you are an individual landlord renting your property yourself, there are still a lot of moving parts to property aspects which need to be managed, like listing and marketing your property, leasing the property, getting that done, keeping the property well maintained, dispatching vendors for repairs, handling the accounting. Well, you get the idea. There's all kinds of moving parts and pieces and lots of dials to be turned. And you end up being kind of an expert in a variety of areas. And you may have the most beautiful property ever, but unless you can manage all those disparate aspects, you're ultimately going to have a hard time keeping up and keeping your tenant happy. So I have with me today by telephone from Santa Barbara, California, a great place to live, Adam Feinstein, who is one of the group product managers at a company called AppFolio, which is one of the leading players in property management software business. And he's going to tell us about how some of these moving parts are managed. Hey, Adam, thanks for joining today.
Thanks, Bob. Great to talk to you.
So, Adam, maybe you can start by telling us briefly about yourself, your background, and what you do for AppFolio, and a little bit about, what AppFolio is all about.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I'm a group product manager here at AppFolio, and I'm primarily working in our payment space, working with our vendors, and working on efforts in next generation AI technologies for us. But that get to touch everything all over the app. And some of that comes from my background. I spent 10 plus years doing product management in the semiconductor device equipment manufacturing domain, which is very different. But I've really enjoyed working in property management for the last several years. And it's just such a human element to it. And I really enjoy that day to day, talking with property managers and solving these problems and pains around, getting more efficient and getting renters into and making them satisfied with the experience they have when they're in and renting a property. So that's really what AppFolio is all about. At the end of the day, we're really helping property managers to deliver on that experience and make everything easier for them so that the renters can be and the residents can be happy.
Yeah, keeping them happy. And I got to tell you, I've been in property management for a long time, and it is a very collaborative business to be in, right? So it's kind of fun. I get where you're coming from and kind of what you said about that, about helping people and being there for people who are trying to improve their businesses or improve the tenant experience. I totally get that. Hey, so I have to ask, because I think we chatted before this started, that I grew up in Santa Barbara, and I'm also a gaucho from UC Santa Barbara. So how do you like living in Santa Barbara?
Santa Barbara is fantastic. I came out here after college, lived here for some years, then moved away to Austin, which is also a great city.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's good, too.
Yeah, but got the opportunity to come back, save the heat, and my wife, myself, and my children, it's hard to imagine for my 5-year-old, my 2-year-old, that they're going to quite understand what it's like growing up here.
Awesome. Well, I miss it. I still get there pretty frequently. I still have family in the area, so we get up there as often as possible. And great wine country there, too, up in the hills. I'd like to do some of that as well. All right, so listen, let's dive into the subject matter here and talk about managing a rental property. And full disclosure here, at North County Property Group, we are an AppFolio client, so I want everybody to know that up front. And I came across your company because I wanted our property management company to be equipped with the highest level of efficiency in managing all the these moving parts. And so, maybe we can kind of start there. I described some of those moving parts as some of the key aspects. And, what's your perspective? Like, what are the different areas that you see that maybe AppFolio provides or that you see, rental property owners having to manage on their own if they're not using the property management software?
Well, one of the core elements that we provide is a full accounting solution. And so, I think that as property managers are scaling their business, maybe moving from paper if they're still on paper, but whether it's Excel or QuickBooks, having a purpose-built accounting solution really helps a lot. But that's really more for the property managers. When we think about all the different things that need to happen, it's really starting with getting visibility when a property's up. So doing the marketing,
right,
getting those leads in, dealing with leases. Once you've got someone in, making sure that you've got a proper screening policy in place, both to make sure that you've got good qualified residents, but also that you're compliant with fair housing. So, a lot of it, whether you're a sole proprietor, you own one property, you may not be thinking about that, but certainly you should be. It's a big risk. And now that we got people in, the ability to track rent and deal and accept payment, the ability to handle maintenance, and then, going through that whole life cycle. So those are the things that I think sometimes, people that are new to it only see the upside, but there's obviously quite a lot of work there. And that's why we love our property managers.
Yeah, it's a daunting undertaking when you think about all the little different aspects of renting a home or being a landlord. You, as an individual who doesn't have access to a property management software, might have to have different systems in place. You mentioned Excel spreadsheets, sticky notes, notepads. Maybe you're a member of the apartment association, so you do have a lease agreement, but, are you sure you're always staying within legal compliance? All that seems pretty daunting. So give me the quick elevator pitch of what AppFolio does. I know some of our listeners wouldn't really qualify to use AppFolio, but from a property manager's perspective, give me the pitch, the elevator pitch on AppFolio.
Yeah, so, we are a completely integrated property management solution that is catering to property managers with 50 units or more. We cover all of the different property types, whether they're single-family homes, multifamily residences, big apartment buildings, mixed-use, commercial, community associations, homeowners associations. And when I talk about a completely integrated vertical solution, that what that really means is we're not asking you to go and identify different integrations or work with different people. We've got all of these different pieces in place. And for us, what we're really focused on is kind of what I alluded to at the beginning, is allowing property managers to deliver on the experience that the resident, the real customers at the end of the day expect. And that's changed quite a lot over the last 10 years and is continuing to change. I think that, 10 years ago, an idea that you might look for an apartment and apply for a lease using your cell phone would realistically be ridiculous. But now we know 80% of people are interacting on their mobile phones. And that's not just 80% of millennials. That's people 45 to 55. They use their phone to shop while they're sitting on the couch and watching TV. And so we're really there to provide that mobile first experience and as a holistic solution within the property management space.
Do you guys track any stats or market data on what each of these processes would take a typical landlord who doesn't have a tool like AppFolio? For example, getting their property leased, then taking all the calls for maintenance, dispatching a vendor. These all happen seamlessly for us as a user of your product. But what would it? Do you guys track any of that? Like, are you able to add all this up and say, yeah, the average landlord spends X number of time, handling all these aspects?
Yeah, it's hard to say because people have different processes and they cater to different types of needs. I will say that one of the key things that we've seen from property managers is the ability for them to double and triple the number of units under management without adding any additional people to the process. And so that's a good example of where we see those efficiencies.
Well, we have people come to us, what we call lease ups as well. It doesn't happen a lot, but occasionally someone will live locally, or we just leased a house for a gentleman, a retired guy who sort of lives in the back corner of his property, and he felt like he was on site and he could handle a lot of the maintenance and kind of be the landlord, but he was looking for the efficiency in just that first part, right? Getting it listed, doing the leasing, taking all the calls. And I mean, that alone, we can do that so much more efficiently with a software like yours, like AppFolio, than a normal person could, who's got to go to Zillow, manually put it up on the internet, maybe manually run an ad, go put sort of a homegrown do it yourself for rent sign out front, screen all the applicants. I mean, you get the picture, right? Even that process alone can be hugely time consuming.
Yeah. And I mean, just think about it. It could very easily take them an additional month to close on all those processes because, their life is getting in the way. Their normal day-to-day is getting in the way. And maybe you delay posting that to Zillow by a couple of days and you don't return all of the guest cards that you get in. And so now you've lost, a month of rent because you didn't want to pay someone or use a proper tool.
Well, and to your point earlier, I mean, in today's kind of instant messaging era, people who inquire on a rental property, they want an answer now. And so if you're a do-it-yourself landlord who maybe, this may be interrupting their life, your typical renter isn't going to wait for someone to respond. So that initial quick response is hugely important. I mean, that's just one example, but it's an important one.
Yeah. And I think it also depends a lot on the environment. Here in Santa Barbara, we're a little unique in that we're so supply constrained that you can be a little awkward and a little different. You're probably still going to find good renters, but we're definitely seeing a turning point in those trends that more properties have been built and we're starting to see vacancies go up a little bit. So people need to be more competitive there and have a better visibility into their leasing funnel if they're really going to fill their unit.
Okay, so your product does a lot of things for us, but just for the purposes of today's podcast, I'm going to kind of streamline this down to 3 hotspots, okay, that I think your product and I think where we probably spend most of our time. First is going to be marketing, all the different aspects of marketing a property. The second is going to be maintenance, so dispatching vendors, taking maintenance requests. And the third will be another topic we've kind of touched on briefly, will be accounting. So if that's okay with you, let's dive into those areas a little bit specifically and kind of keep this on track to hopefully finish within about the typical episode length of 30 minutes. So let's talk about marketing. We've kind of touched on this a bit. There are hundreds of consumer-oriented real estate sites out there where the typical person could post, right? But it's physically impossible to be on all of them. Zillow, probably the most well-known. What are the other key rental sites in your mind or from AppFolio's perspective where every property should be if it's going to be listed for rent?
So, I don't think that there's necessarily key other sites, right? We have about 100 affiliate sites that we work with when we're helping to automatically post listings to the internet. And so that's really the way that we look at it. Is not, there's a couple of key others. It's let's make sure that you're posting your site everywhere. And the way that we solve for that is you only have to click one button and you're posting to 100 sites.
Got it. Right. So, I mean, we love that feature because we can put our photos on a property in, the description, the rent rate, all the details on a property. And as Adam says, in one click of a button, your home gets listed on Zillow, Trulia, HotPads, Realtor.com, hundreds of different sites. And so for us, that's really fantastic. And like Adam, you were saying, it gets the property out everywhere pretty much.
Yeah, so we're affiliated with Zumper, Show Me the Rent, EveryRent.com, RadPad, PadMapper is a new one that's coming up, Campus Cribs, Apartable. So that's just a handful of those that we're affiliated with.
Great, and for like an individual homeowner, he'd have to list all those manually, right? Pretty much. There aren't many other ways around that. You use the word guest cards. That's how they come into AppFolio. So all of these guest cards come into us through kind of one common funnel from all these various sites, which is pretty darn convenient as well. So it kind of funnels them in through one process as opposed to, I guess if you were out on a bunch of different sites and you had listed individually, you'd be getting phone calls, you'd be getting emails. There are lots of different ways where a prospective tenant could be coming in. And you guys also offer an autoresponder type solution as part of AppFolio, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can set it up to have your own personalized message that can auto respond back. And we've also got the ability to identify and schedule showings. So you can drive to a given showing time. It will text message remind the prospective tenant that their showing has been scheduled. And then you can even have them confirm it, some period of time before. And if they don't respond, it will automatically cancel it. And that's synced to your calendar.
Well, that's really helpful information and just shows some of the power of AppFolio and also just for helping people like us who are trying to get the product or the property marketed well. Okay, let's shift into maintenance a bit. So We happen to be a licensed general contractor in addition to a broker and property management company. And so we have a very robust list of vendors. However, for the typical homeowner, they might have, one guy who does kind of all the plumbing, various people that they work with on a regular basis. But finding those vendors could be pretty challenging, and then keeping track of them also in some kind of a database. But maybe, starting with the tenants, maybe you can help us understand how through your system they would request a repair. With a typical do-it-yourself homeowner who's renting their property, I'm assuming a call would come in. It could be at all hours of the night, could be in the morning, could be when you're out to dinner with your family. How does it work in AppFolio?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and especially as we compare the value of an individual owner to someone who's using a professional property manager with the proper property management solution. So again, in terms of that experience management, we meet the resident the way that they expect to be met. So they can log in on their phone. We've got a mobile app that, with Face ID or your thumb unlock, and you can submit a maintenance request, and then immediately that will go off. We've got an Alexa integration. You can say, hey, Alexa, tell my property manager that the toilet's flooded, and that will send off a service request. And as a value-added service, in order for us to help support property manager scaling, we have a maintenance contact center that will take 24/7, can take those maintenance requests, whether they come from the mobile or we can answer the phone and properly dispatch, a plumber in that case that the toilet was overflowed.
Yeah, the smartphone app is a terrific addition you guys have brought on. How long has that been with the company now, or part of the company? I think, about a year?
Yeah, we announced it at our annual customer conference back in September of last year. And now we've got hundreds of thousands of tenants that are using that on a monthly basis to pay their rent and submit maintenance requests.
We've made a big push for that because it's so great. Once tenants know about it and use the app, they can actually not only open up the app to submit a maintenance request, but they can also take a snapshot of the problem that might be occurring. They can include that along with the description of what's going on. And then my property management team gets an alert, and we have it such that all of the property managers get it. So if someone happens to be on call at night, that alert, obviously notifies them that, hey, somebody's having an issue. They can quickly determine, hey, is this an emergency or can this wait till the morning? And then they kind of do the triage from there and go to the next step, which is then sort of putting that maintenance request out to a vendor who can take care of it from there. So yeah, the app has been hugely helpful for us.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you mentioned is, for your team, having a property management software that's super mobile friendly means that even if they're out to dinner, they can get all the functionality of AppFolio they want right on their phone.
One of the other things we've enjoyed too, or has been very helpful, is there's even a satisfaction survey it's called a work order, when a maintenance request is made and then it's completed by one of our workers or the vendors. And then immediately a satisfaction survey goes out to the tenant, so the tenant can rank and rate that particular vendor who you sent out. It's super helpful in terms of managing our vendor pool.
Yeah, we've definitely heard a lot about that in terms of the satisfaction survey, making sure that vendors are doing a good job and doing the job they said they did.
Okay, so let's touch on the biggie, and that's accounting. You brought it up earlier. Even if you're a landlord who's doing the rental aspects yourself, you've got to keep your accounting records and you've got to keep good financials in hand. And as a broker in California, it's a bit different because we're required to handle all rent and property maintenance items from what's called a broker's trust. I know you're familiar with the term. Maybe our listeners are too. And for the average owner, this seems kind of challenging because, incoming rent and vendor payments might be commingled, for example, with their own personal account. So that's, I think, one thing that's important to understand. How is the process automated on AppFolio? So if you were doing your own accounting versus maybe how it's handled in AppFolio, can you kind of walk us through that a bit?
Yeah. So, let's start with where the money comes from. So the rent comes in and those residents are easily able to pay rent online in any way that they want, whether it's with an e-check, whether it's with a credit or debit card. So when the funds come in online, and basically, for property managers that are getting into 80 and 90% of their rent coming in online, it's like a miracle. That automatically gets entered and
We do. We have that. We have about 95%, right, by online payments, which is amazing. A couple, older folks who are kind of old school and still like writing the check, but everyone else pretty much, has adopted that.
Exactly. And so that automatically brings the rent in. It brings it in and it applies it to the right place. From there, you can create bills. Those bills could be associated to the work order. Maybe the maintenance request went out. So now we know exactly the right GL. We can track, did it go to repairs? Was it for plumbing, carpentry, etc.? We can automatically pay those vendors via e-check or a bill pay check if we want. And then if we're managing the property on somebody else's behalf, we've got processes to automatically pull out the management fees and pay the company and then distribute back to the owners with a automated owner statement as well.
I think that's what owners like from us is that we're able to generate from your system an owner statement every month, usually comes out during the first week of the month, shows all the rent that's been collected, maybe any other deposits the owner has made for maybe larger improvements at the home, any other items that the tenant has paid, all that's indicated, any expenses. So if a plumber was there, that's captured. And then, we pay ourselves our management fees, all this is captured, and then the owner distribution final amount. So that statement, the process we have on our side, and I'm sure this is typical with your other property management companies, is the statement goes out and then followed by basically a direct deposit, which we also do through AppFolio, and the owner gets notified of both. Hey, you've got an e-check on its way to your bank account, and hey, you've got this statement that's available for download. And owners love that. It's so automated and so efficient. Okay, what else, Adam? I know we're just kind of scratching the surface here, and there are probably tons of other aspects landlords should be aware of. Any other closing remarks or any other things you'd like to tell us about AppFolio that you see commonly used by property managers or that maybe homeowners who are renting the property should be aware of?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that I alluded to, but would be remiss not to mention. So one is having a good screening policy. And so we have integrated screening decisions as part of our workflow. So this allows you to, get the credit and criminal history, evictions, bad tenancy, all those things, and not just have it, but you can potentially have it, being a formula so that you're applying the same standard to everyone and you remain compliant.
That's a really good point. We use it and we love it because the rental application is also online, which is amazing. So you don't have somebody, filling out with their pen a handwritten document. It's all done online. And there they provide, the prospective tenants will provide all of their information, upload their bank statements, their W-2, their, copy of their paycheck. And then once it's submitted by the prospective renter, we get it in an alert and we can literally screen them instantly. Okay, what else, Adam? Anything else you can think of?
Yeah, that leads me to the next thing in terms of kind of this managing risk, whether it's landlord liability insurance or actual renter's insurance. Those are both offerings that we have fully integrated in. You'd be surprised how many renters don't really understand the value of renter's insurance in terms of protecting their stuff, but also protecting the property. And I think that that's something that, some individual property owners maybe sometimes don't consider.
Yeah, no, it's a good point too, because sometimes the owners themselves don't even realize, oh gosh, I should be requiring this, and they can require it. But it has to be kind of built into the process. Checking all the right boxes as you go through the full leasing cycle. All right. Well, listen, you and I could talk about this for, until the end of the day, probably because we know so much about it and our business so well. But unfortunately, we don't have time for that. I think we've hit on the top kind of areas that we were hoping to. If someone listening out there does have a bunch of properties and could potentially utilize AppFolio, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, if you just go to appfolio.com, you can chat with a representative right there and they'll help direct you anywhere you want to go.
Okay, so it's AppFolio. It's AppFolio. Is that correct? .com?
That's correct.
Okay, fantastic. Hey, Adam, thanks for joining us today. This has been a great episode and we're so glad you joined us. And I think it's been great knowledge you've passed along about managing a rental property to our listeners, and so much appreciate you being here. That concludes today's episode. Thank you all for joining the Property Management Brainstorm podcast. Until next time, we will be in the field working hard for our clients to maximize their property value and income and maintain top tenant relations. And we will see you next time.